Hello, welcome back to Patrons Golf. We are officially 1 week away from the Open Championship, the last major of the year. We've got two events this week. We obviously have the Genesis Scottish Open, which for the most part is kind of the main event for this week in terms of field quality, and then we have the ISCO Championship, which is a ultimate alternate event for the PGA Tour, which I'll kind of touch on at the end. But yeah, it looks really exciting. We're kind of we're kind of at like really the meaty point of the schedule now. This is things start to ramp up in terms of the PGA Tour after this. We've heading towards the playoffs. So look, I love these two events here, the Open Championship and the Scottish, purely just because of the time zone. In all honesty, this will kick off at in roughly kind of like 5 hours time for me, which is kind of perfect timing. So it does actually give me a chance to watch probably a lot more golf than I usually do for the PGA Tour without having to get up super early. But yeah, look, this week we're at the Renaissance Club again in North Berwick, Scotland. This probably sounds a little bit disrespectful, but it's probably like an entry level links golf course. I've kind of called it. As you can see here, the past three events have kind of had, I guess, pretty decent scoring. Goddard and McIlroy both winning at 15 under last year in 2023, and then Bobby Mack with his triumphant 18 under back in 24. So when this course does, I guess, show its full, true link style, brutal Scottish weather capabilities, it is a lot difficult to play. Xander Schauffele won back here in 22 with 7 under. So look, it does, I guess, depend on what kind of weather conditions we get this week in terms of in terms of how the course will play. But we've got it's a Tom Doak designed club which was opened in 2008. It's hosted the Scottish Open since 2019 here. It's not super rugged and unpredictable like most Open Championship venues, but it does still, I guess, demand the basic links golf skill set. Players are going to need to be creative. They'll need to have precision and patience and handle the elements, I guess, when it does kind of present themselves. It's a par 70, playing a little under 7,300 yards, which appears long on paper, but there's kind of firm fairways and favorable winds can, I guess, make the course a little bit shorter. But I guess on some days it does actually make it the complete opposite. So we've got these large undulating greens, which are going to provide plenty of opportunities for those who can kind of control their approach shots. But I think it's also going to test a lot of players this week. And, you're going to have these real awkward length par putts and I guess some difficult up and down looks, which were players are probably not, especially for the American or the players predominantly playing on the PGA Tour, are used to. So it's a course that's probably going to, I guess, reward imagination. You're going to see a lot of bump and runs as like kind of a preferred play, as opposed to your typical, I guess, lofted wedge shots. And look, weather will always be like the biggest defense for a links golf course. And uh, as we kind of touched on, the calm conditions kind of over the last few years have kind of netted a pretty decent scoring rate. For me this week, we've got kind of the last results here, as you can see. So putting and approach is per round typically the biggest separator, but off the tee and around the greens is still super important for me this week. Uh, I'm looking for players who are long off the tee. I want players who will kind of make the most of the reachable par fives and the shorter par fours. And I guess despite this, playing typically easier than some links courses, I kind of want someone who kind of ticks every aspect of the game and factored in. So for me, the most important stats this week are strokes gained approach, strokes gained tee to green, driving distance, three putt avoidance, and then par five scoring. We'll take a look at last year's event. So Chris Goddard won at 15 under. Ironic timing with him just coming off a shooting at 9 or 10 under, whatever it was, to crush my dreams in the John Deere, which I will touch on at the end as well. But yeah, sort of two-stroke winner over Rory McIlroy and Marco Penge, who actually is making his return from injury this week, which probably someone like I would have actually loved to have bet prior to him getting injured. But yeah, probably a bit of a watch and see this week. I think it's a pretty tough ask to come back from that layoff, especially with this field. Uh, that's probably one thing I didn't actually touch on. Obviously, uh, this event is kind of is heavily just filled with PGA Tour players, but also the kind of the best players from the DP World Tour. So from a non-major point of view, this is probably like one of the best fields we're gonna see this week. So yeah, a bit of a tough ask for Marco to pull that off there. And look, a lot of the usual suspects, Scotty, Xander, Ludwig, Justin Rose, Matt Fitzpatrick, and yeah, even Nicolai Højgaard, who I think is a kind of an interesting play this week in terms of how he profiles. But yeah, as you can kind of see here, most of the top 10 is is kind of is kind of had really good weeks putting, really strong weeks around the green. Approach is kind of is a little bit it's a little bit inconsistent as well as is off the tees, but I think like probably I guess that the one thing that I'm taking away from here is that there's players are all kind of hitting in at least two or at least three of those buckets and doing it really well. If they're not, Chris Goddard didn't have a great approach week, but he was really strong off the tee, putting and around the greens. And then for Rory McIlroy wasn't great off the tee, but approach around the greens and putting was good. So guys who kind of tick, I guess, multiple boxes is what I take away from this. All right, let's get into some players that I've profiled for this week. First one we've got this week. We won't really look at that. We'll quickly go over the betting market. Scotty, kind of a bigger price than what he has been for, seemingly some time. Just lost at the Travelers, which was, I wouldn't say probably not heartbreaking for someone who's won as much as he has, but it does kind of feel like we're waiting for Scotty to win one event, and then once he does, he's gonna go on a bit of a run. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like if he does win, I feel like if he does win in Scotland this week, he wins the Open as well. I think he's probably still gonna win the Open anyway. But yeah, there's a few good names here. John Rahm's an interesting one. Third favorite in the betting market, but hasn't been great, and obviously has had a little bit of a layoff with Liv not playing an event for a little while. Um, and Xander's a former Open winner, with good results in Scotland. That's kind of interesting to me. And then, Chris Goddard, we kind of spoke about beforehand, coming off his fifth win, his fifth PGA Tour win at the John Deere, and then a guy like Tyrrell Hatton, uh, who's kind of just always super consistent whenever there's either a major or one of these elevated events that kind of has, every tour represented in it. And then, yeah, there's Nicolai Højgaard there, who I kind of mentioned in terms of, I guess, how he profiles for this course. Can't really fault people from there. Moving on to my profiles. First guy, someone I've probably featured in this multiple times. I'm back. Like I love Little Fitz. Ever since he's become a full-time member of the PGA Tour, I've just found myself almost loving most of the spots he finds himself in the betting markets. The one thing about him is the driver is super accurate, and his long approach play is just so impressive. So I think the one thing holding him back here is he's miscut in his only two tries here in Scotland. But like, I'm not super concerned about that. He's coming off another top 10 in a signature event. He's 23rd in the US Open. He's going to win again this season. Like you cannot convince me otherwise. So, and look, obviously he's British. He's look he's grown up playing on these styles of golf courses, and I guess when the conditions do turn, look, you kind of do want to be someone who kind of grew up playing a lot of golf in these conditions. Some key ranks for the last 20, um, strokes gained, approach 10th, tee to green 11th, and driver accuracy 13th. So, a lot of good stuff. A lot of good stuff for Alex there. Next guy is look, it's a stacked field, and I get that you can't be short priced on everyone, but I just don't really agree with the price for Siwoo here. The US Open, the Travelers were pretty ordinary. He probably should have won the Byron Nelson. The T10 at the Memorial. Uh, Even after like a couple of really poor, unlike Siwoo this season events, his recent ranks are still like really strong. Like he's 20th in approach, 15th in driver accuracy, and even 28th in three putt avoidance, which is one of the things I am looking at this week is like, I guess how guys can escape those, 8 to 10 foot par putts. You're going to have like a few of them. So, I mean, that's probably the only thing he's putting, as you can see there, is 156. That's probably the the only thing that's, I guess, kept him from winning this year. The approach play is just so good. Like the ball striking is so good that uh, I just I have to take this number. Like he's 90 at the moment. And that's what I've bet. I've done that on Betfair. I probably should have mentioned. So I've taken little Fitz at 60s on Betfair as well. But yeah, look, 90s for Siwoo here. I get that like the knock on him is probably his playing record on I guess link style courses, or I guess anything in the UK or Ireland. It's not good. I think his best finish is maybe like a T15. There's a ton of miscuts, but look, I think this price for me is just something you don't see often. So I'm happy to get involved. I'm happy to get involved at him at this price, and hope he's kind of his form does come back, and that the putter holds on. Next guy is look. This should be pretty easy to explain. His June was just so impressive. It's Tom Kim. Uh, it really does look like his game has completely turned a corner after like a really long and miserable stretch. His US Open was so good, finishing solo third, and he did look like a completely different player to, a guy who was almost probably fighting for his card with I guess the form line he had going into kind of that last month. Um, the other reason why this is such an easy play at his price, like he's 85 at the moment, which is what I've bet. Um, his record at the Scottish Open is super strong. He's got a solo third, T6, T15, and T17 in like four tries at the Renaissance Club. So the form the form lines are good going in. The course history is strong going in. You had a T2 back at the Open in 23, which is when he was playing his good golf. So look at this price in this event, like yeah, I'm more than happy to I guess take a guy who's playing with a bit of confidence heading into a course he's had, success on. And I guess a style of golf that he does have success in as well. So I'm in at that. Like the last 20 rounds, he's second in strokes gained approach. He's eighth in overall proximity, which I think is good. We kind of talked about the controlling of your approach shots here to kind of, I guess, avoid getting yourself into those tricky and kind of creative up and downs. Yeah, I'm in. I did not think I'd be talking about Tom Kim at some point in on this, but yeah, I'm happy to take a go here. And as you can kind of see, right, like his last 8 rounds, you can kind of see that the approach stuff has been trending for a little while. And the putting as well is kind of out of red figures. So the driver accuracy's up. There's a lot of, yeah, a lot of really good stuff here the last month. The next two guys, I'm not going to show profiles for because they're DP World Tour players, but I did want to find, I guess, some spots in my card for, I guess, a couple of guys on the DP World Tour, obviously being a crossover event. The first one is Angel Ayora. I have no idea if that's how it's pronounced. Like, I'll be honest, I haven't seen a lot of him play, but whenever I've seen him play, it's been really, really impressive. Aesthetically, a really beautiful golf swing, and he's having a really good season. I think he's 20th in the race to Dubai, two top fives in his last three starts, and like he ranks, near the top on tour for a lot of what I think is needed for success this week. He is making his Scottish Open debut, which I did find a little bit weird, given the fact that he'd been on the DP World Tour for a couple of years. But like, I don't know about the eligibility for this event for those players, so that might not actually be a shock. But for this year, he ranks third for strokes gained off the tee and fifth in strokes gained tee to green and 11th in approach. So like really good stuff there. He's 160 at the moment. That's a guy like I will play in the top finishes, and probably even take a play in like the first round leader and stuff like that. Second guy is someone from this part of the world who has had, I wouldn't say an inconsistent season. I think he's had a really, really strong season. It's Daniel Hillier. He's another guy who kind of ranks really highly on the DP World Tour for what you need this week. He has missed his last two cuts, but had a T7 and T14 prior to that. And that those followed his performance at the PGA Championship, which was really impressive. Finished T26, which obviously doesn't sound amazing, but I think for a player of his caliber, playing on that course with how that course chewed up and spat out, genuinely the world's best. He shot a 71, 69, and then a pair of 70s on the weekend. Super consistent and like really impressive. A really impressive week of golf for someone like him. His start to the season was just completely ridiculous. In his first six events, he had three top fives, a tied for sixth, and then another top 20 and a tied for 26. So he's played some really, really good golf this year. And yeah, ranks on the DP World Tour, 10th in approach, 11th in putting, and then 6th in total strokes gained. So he's 310 at Betfair. Like, there's worse ways to spend $5. It's just the same as that. I will, as Angel, like I'm going to be playing him for kind of the top finishes and kind of hope he can find his way into like a top 10, maybe a top five, but I think he's worth a play. At this point, I think you could do a lot worse, especially from the DP World Tour guys. So yeah, that's what I'm looking at for the Scottish Open this week. I'm not going to dive into it, not going to dive into it too deeply. But yeah, we'll jump into quickly the ISCO Championship this week. I'm not going to give like a full breakdown on the course here, but this is the second time it's been run under this name. William Mao won it last year. Funny enough, he could have played in Scotland this week. I think he was an alternate and he got into the field, but then decided to, I guess, stay back and defend his title, which I think is probably the right thing to do. I'm not sure how many times he's going to win on the PGA Tour, so probably, yeah, probably made the right call there. But I think for Hurstbourne this week, it's going to be a real grinding kind of strategic week. Last year's event was super low scoring. Um, and I think like the key separators were are kind of a little bit similar to the John Deere. So putting and approach were kind of at a premium, and that's kind of what I'm looking at this week. So I've gone with strokes gained approach, strokes gained putting, good drives gained. I've added strokes gained around the green just based on the element of the low scoring. Trying to get guys kind of surviving and getting away with pars they probably shouldn't. And then also, I wanted some approach stuff in a small bucket. I've got three guys profiled here. Look, the betting market here is pretty pretty ordinary. See if I can get that up. I don't even know if I can. So it's a different event. I don't think I can. That's completely fine. Look, I've had three plays this week. Like I will point out like so I thought Jackson Coyven last week in the betting market was pretty bad. Like in terms of where they priced him, he was kind of like third favorite, fourth favorite. Uh, he's favorite this week. He comes off a miscut. He did have a T5 here last year as an amateur, but like for me, you just like you couldn't pay me. You couldn't pay me to. At his price in the betting market, I'm not going near him. This week, I've got three guys. Ben James is one, kind of the similar profile to Koivu. Three starts. He's had a really good round at the RBC Canadian Open, had the 36-hole lead. He's got a top 25 at the US Open. You can get him at 50s right now. That's a really good spot for him. Another guy's AJ Hewitt. You can get him at 70s. Has some really good ranks for this field, which is an absolute disgusting dog's breakfast of a field. But he's ninth, he's eighth in to strokes gained total, seventh in around the green, and 10th in putting. Hasn't had a great start to his first PGA Tour season, but look, if you're 70s in, I guess this field, you're going to come with some baggage. So I will take a take a flyer on him. And the last guy is David Skins, who is kind of a, mid 40s battler kind of grinder. And if he's ever going to win on the PGA Tour, it's going to be an event like this. He's got some decent form lines coming in, T20 in Canada, and then a T33rd last week at the John Deere. Lack of distance won't hurt him off the tee, but has got some decent approach and putting numbers. So look, that's it for me this week. Looking forward to having 15,000 bets and getting ready for the Open Championship.